The president of Iran, Ibrahim Raisi, is dead after his helicopter crashed over the weekend. Since the Israel-Gaza war is really a proxy war between Israel and Iran, armchair analysts immediately began to suspect Israel of taking out the Iranian leader. That theory seems a little weak to me. Not because the Israelis would not want to kill him, I'm sure they would, just because I don't really see how they would have in this case. Not to mention there was bad weather in Raisi's flight path. It took the rescue crews a long time even to find the helicopter. Helicopters are not exactly the safest mode of travel. If they can get Kobe, they can get anybody. And the two other helicopters in Raisi's convoy did eventually land safely. So if it were a hit, it would have to be an extremely, implausibly targeted hit that the other two guys didn't see. The next theory then is that it was some kind of internal enemy. The Iranian regime is not all that popular. After the news broke, some Iranians were so happy they reportedly started setting off fireworks. I don't know how the chopper went down, but while everyone is speculating, it is worth remembering that sometimes significant events in history just sort of happen. The Mayflower Pilgrims avoided starving to death in 1620. There it is, end of the American experiment right there. They avoided that pretty much only because two Indians walked out of the woods in the middle of nowhere, Massachusetts, speaking English, because one of them had been taken captive and sent to England and then brought back to America and walked down because his village had been wiped out, and he just ended up right where they landed, 300 miles off course from where they wanted to go. Just happened. The British did not snuff out the American Revolution in 1776 because right as they were about to do it, a fog rolled over New York and allowed George Washington's army to evacuate from Brooklyn. Then they fight the rest of the war, and then they defeat the British. World War I started because a chauffeur took a wrong turn in Bosnia. I am not saying that the president of Iran was not killed by a foreign enemy. Maybe he was. I'm not saying he wasn't killed by a domestic enemy. Maybe he was. I'm not saying that this won't start World War III. It might. But people are not always in control of events that happen in history, the ultimate author of which is God. I'm Michael Knowles. This is The Michael Knowles Show. Welcome back to the show. A woman has wrestled a peeping Tom in a gender-neutral changing room. Who would have guessed that you would get peeping Toms in these gender-neutral bathrooms and changing rooms? So strange. Only every normal person predicted that. Now, speaking of predictions, as we predict that the economy remains shaky, you might want to check out Birch Gold. Text Knowles to 989898. Can your savings weather another economic storm? Think about what you've put away for the future. Inflation can render cash worthless, and we all remember the real estate crash of 2008. During times of economic uncertainty or market volatility, investors flock to gold as a safe haven asset. Gold's value tends to increase during turbulent times, providing a buffer against market downturns. This is why people are flocking to gold now and why Birch Gold is busier than ever. Birch Gold understands that navigating financial decisions can be scary. That is why their dedicated in-house IRA department is there to guide you every step of the way. Birch Gold is committed to addressing your questions and concerns promptly. Their team is always ready to provide answers and clarity, whether it's about fees, taxes on rollovers, or the timing of the process. They are here to ensure you feel valued and well-informed. Text Knowles, KNWLES, to 989898 to talk to one of Birch Gold's experts and claim your free info kit on gold. You will learn how to convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in gold. Best part is, doesn't cost you a penny out of pocket. Just text Knowles, KNWLES, to 989898. That is Knowles, KNWLES, to 989898. Speaking of national leaders, and New York, actually, President Trump has just announced that on the heels of all of his campaign activities in New York, the bodega and the pizza to the firemen, Trump is planning events at Madison Square Garden in New York, and even in the South Bronx.
I think we have a good chance of winning New York. We're going to give it a big play. We're going to the South Bronx to do a rally. We're going to be doing a rally at Madison Square Garden, we believe. We think we're signing Madison Square Garden to do it. We're going to have a big rally.
MSG, crazy enough. I mean, this is the biggest venue in Manhattan, most legendary venue in Manhattan for the past, what is it, 50 years or so? And then the South Bronx, which is a kind of a dangerous place. Why is Trump going to be campaigning there? He's going to be campaigning there because he's stuck in New York because the Democrats are prosecuting him politically. So he's got to be in New York. And you would think New York is the worst place for a conservative Republican to be campaigning. But Trump can do it because Trump is a New York legend. Trump is a New Yorker. He talks like a New Yorker. He acts like a New Yorker. And a lot of New Yorkers love him. Not the ones who appear on TV, not the big prominent New York elected officials, but a lot of New Yorkers love him, including the kind that are in the Bronx, love this guy. The neighborhood of the Bronx that I've spent the most time in is in the North Bronx called Arthur Avenue, the Belmont neighborhood. It's the real Little Italy. And there are a lot of Republicans up there. Now, you might say the South Bronx is different, Michael, because the South Bronx, it's not Italian, let's say, and it's very dangerous, and there's all sorts of criminal activity. Yeah, that's true. There used to be a lot of criminal activity in the Italian neighborhood too, by the way. But President Trump, more than any Republican in recent memory, has been making inroads with racial and ethnic minorities. Yeah, the Democrats are whining about this every day on TV now. He appears to be making serious inroads, certainly with Hispanics, and it looks like with male black voters too. Furthermore, the South Bronx, though criminal and though comprising lots of demographics who are traditionally Democrat, not exactly the wokest place in the world. I can't imagine AOC or some other big lib campaigning around there. It's just not going to happen. Trump can do it. He's the most popular Republican in New York, probably ever, certainly since Rudy Giuliani. And so if he's going to be stuck there, Trump should poke the Democrats right in the eye and say, okay, you're going to keep me here? Well, watch, I'm going to show you that I am extremely popular even in the neighborhoods that you consider to be your property, you libs. Mitt Romney could not do that. That is not a Mitt Romney stomping ground. But Mitt Romney, for all of his squishiness and liberalism, is coming out and defending Donald Trump, sort of. He's at least criticizing Biden and the Democrats for prosecuting Donald Trump. Here's why.
I think President Biden made an enormous error. He should have fought like crazy to keep this prosecution from going forward. It was a win-win for Donald Trump. If Donald Trump is exonerated...
Is that Joe Biden's job? Or is that shouldn't there be a separation?
I've been around for a while. If LBJ had been president and he didn't want something like this to happen, he'd have been all over that prosecutor saying, you better not bring that forward or I'm going to drive you out of office.
But I'm pretty sure you support having separate but equal branches of government.
I do, but I also, let me tell you, I mean, you may disagree with this, but had I been President Biden, when the Justice Department brought out indictments, I would have immediately pardoned him. I'd have pardoned President Trump. Why? Well, because it makes me, President Biden, the big guy, and the person I pardoned, the little guy.
Mitt Romney, crazy to be saying this, didn't expect to be saying this. Absolutely right. Absolutely right regarding Donald Trump, whom he hates. Of course, Biden should have pardoned Trump. And of course, he could have stopped the prosecution if he had wanted to. And this journalist playing dumb. But, don't you think it's a totally separate part of the government, that DOJ, under the control of Joe Biden? It's totally separate and independent, right? Oh, yeah. You believe that? I got a bridge in Brooklyn to sell you. What about the Democrat politicians campaigning on prosecuting Trump in New York? What about the two other prosecutions in addition to those first two? If Biden had come out and said, cut it out, no prosecutions of Trump, there would be no prosecution of Trump, obviously. And then, at least for the federal case, Biden could have pardoned him. Now, notice, Romney is totally right here. The prosecution of Trump has totally backfired on the Democrats. But notice Romney's calculus here is not coming from the justice of the matter. He's not saying Trump doesn't deserve to be prosecuted. It's a purely political calculation. I don't think Romney all of a sudden loves Donald Trump. I don't think Romney is going to go out there and vote for Donald Trump. But Romney is looking at this and he's saying, Biden, you idiot, you're blowing it. Trump is going to come back to power because of your stupid miscalculations. It's a purely cold calculation, but further evidence when you see it, especially from Trump's critics, that the Democrats have completely bungled this. Now, speaking of political calculations, Marco Rubio has just come out and endorsed mass deportation of illegal aliens. Marco Rubio, former member of the Gang of Eight trying to push an amnesty bill for the illegals, all of a sudden, Marco Rubio does a 180 and endorses not just closing the border, not just restricting immigration, lining them all up, putting them on airplanes and trains and automobiles and shipping them out of the country. Here's the turnaround.
If reelected, Donald Trump has said he's willing to build migrant detention camps and deploy the U.S. military to deport the more than 11 million undocumented immigrants in this country. It would be the largest deportation operation in American history. Do you support that plan?
11 million. That's an outdated. That was the number 10 years ago. We're talking upwards of 20, 25, maybe 30 million. The answer to your question is yes. We cannot absorb 25, 30 million people who entered this country illegally. They're here illegally. What country on earth would tolerate that? We don't even know who most of these people are. They talk about vetting them with what? They're coming from nations that don't even have document systems in many cases. Yes, we are going to have to do something, unfortunately. We're going to have to do something dramatic to remove people from this country that are here illegally, especially people we know nothing about. But 10 million, 11 million, that was the number 15 years ago. Today, it's upwards of probably 25 to 30 million, maybe more. This is not immigration. Yeah. You asked me about immigration. Yeah. This is mass migration. Mass migration. This is an invasion of the country. Yeah. And it needs to be dealt with dramatically.
Now, let me translate that from Marco Rubio speak. The translation of that whole diatribe about migration, which I broadly agree with, is, I want to be vice president. Dear Donald Trump, please pick me to be your running mate because I want to be vice president and then the president in 2028. That's what that's about. Maybe Marco Rubio has also had a sincere change of heart on immigration and amnesty. He could have. I've changed my mind on plenty of political views, and I'm sure that a lot of Republicans have, especially on this migration question. But 10, 15 years ago, you want to talk about 10, 15 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, a lot of Republicans are saying, illegal immigration is bad, but we need more migration, frankly. We just need to reform the system, and we can't have these poor illegal aliens living in the shadows. We need to give them a path to citizenship and amnesty, and that's what Rubio was talking about then. That's what a lot of Republicans were talking about then. Now, not so much, because Donald Trump has changed the position of the Republican Party. I think it could change even much further. I think that not only do we need to restrict illegal immigration, we need to restrict all migration, as most people indicate on surveys that they want to do, because the number is insane and the amount of foreigners who have moved into our country in the last 60 years represents the largest movement of people ever in recorded history. As nothing against the immigrants, it's too much, it's too many, and you're going to lose control of your political order if you allow that to persist. So I think we could go a lot further. But in as much as the Republican Party has changed its position at all, it is because of Donald Trump. And if you want to be Donald Trump's running mate, you got to get with the program on that very important issue. Build the wall was one of the biggest chants of the 2016 race. And Trump did build some of the wall, and then Biden took the wall down. The issue for the Trump campaign has not changed. And Rubio has changed his views. Perhaps sincerely, but perhaps also because this guy is on the short list to be VP. There are other people on the short list. We'll get to them in just one second. First, though, maybe it's all for nil because the big tech giants who control not only the internet, but control our thoughts in many ways, will be able to rig the election and move millions and millions of voters without us even noticing. That is the theory of Dr. Robert Epstein, who I just sat down with.
We published a landmark study in which we show bias in Google search results can change people's views about anything at all.
How bad is it?
I gave a briefing, a private briefing. A few minutes later, one of them walked out. I know exactly who it was, and he walked up to me and said, Dr. Epstein, based on what you just told us, I predict you're going to be killed in some sort of accident in the next few months. But a few months later, my beautiful, amazing wife was killed in a horrendous car accident.
Are you deterred at all?
Yes. Then there's another part of me, which is the science guy. Every single thing we do is relevant to everything that's happening right now.
Right.
With the algorithms shifting the views of people who are undecided on some issue or other around the world by the billions.
Now what?
We are fucked, okay?
Michael and Google's Worst Nightmare is available now on the Michael Knowles YouTube channel and on X and on Spotify and all over the place. Rubio wants to be VP. Say that 5 times fast. He is not the only one. The Veep stakes have heated up. We now have another contender, J.D. Vance, senator from Ohio, author of Hillbilly Elegy, sitting down with Don Jr.
I was in a CNN green room, 4 or 5 months or so ago, and it was right after the Bragg thing had come down. And it was funny, like all of these guys, and these are sort of, almost everybody else in that room was like anti-Trump. Mm-hmm. And they were mad at Alvin Bragg. And why were they mad at Alvin Bragg? Because the case was so ridiculous that they thought it actually increased the argument that this is all a witch hunt, right? Yeah. This is all about getting Donald Trump. This is not about justice. So they were actively mad at Alvin Bragg for being such an idiot and bringing this case. And now that all the other cases have fallen apart, and this is the only one where you have a political judge and no political prosecutor, so it's still going to trial, this has become the thing the media is focused on.
Yeah.
And I kind of just want to talk to these people and be like, you guys recognize this was bullshit a few months ago. And I will say, Don, even CNN, to their credit, some of their people are recognizing that this is absurd.
So there he is, JD, sitting with the son of the Republican nominee, talking about how the prosecution is ridiculous, even speaking in a kind of a little bit more of a Trumpy way. He wants to be VP, I think. I don't know. I haven't talked to him about it, but I think he would be interested. And according to the news reports, I haven't talked to any of these people about it, the potential other Veep stakes contenders are Tim Scott, Doug Burgum, Rubio, Elise Stefanik, Congress lady from New York, Tom Cotton, and Ron DeSantis. So what about JD? JD is a really strong VP choice because, by my calculation, he is the only top contender who could be a really strong nominee for president in 2028. These other guys, not so much. Tim Scott, really great guy, really nice guy. A little bit more the supporting actor, probably, than the leading man. A little bit nice, which some voters read as milquetoast. Probably not going to be the strongest presidential candidate in 2028. You saw this because he dropped out very early when he ran for president this time. Doug Burgum, maybe there's some new Burgumentum being generated. Probably not the strongest choice. A guy who is governor of, I think, North Dakota, who is very squishy on the social issues, who bribed people to donate money to his campaign so that he could make it to the debate stage. He said, if you give any amount of money, even $1 to my campaign, I'll give you a $20 gift card. So probably not going to be the strongest choice. Rubio's been around a long time. He irritated a lot of conservatives with his squishiness 10 years ago. He ran for president in 2016, didn't do all that well. Probably not the leading guy. Elise Stefanik, give me a break. Tom Cotton, he's a strong senator, probably a little too hawkish on foreign policy for the present tenor of the GOP. The GOP is a little bit more focused on domestic issues, skeptical of foreign adventurism. That gives someone like JD, who has been very skeptical of aid to Ukraine and all sorts of foreign involvement, probably gives JD a little bit of an edge on where the zeitgeist is in the GOP over someone like Tom Cotton. And then Ron DeSantis, Trump is not going to pick Ron DeSantis. It's not going to happen. Trump does this a lot. DeSantis is a great governor. He's a really, really strong politician. But look, these are two guys from the same state. First of all, creates difficulties even to be on the ticket constitutionally. They can work it out, but it's a little tricky. he's just too much of a competitor to Trump. Trump plays around with these guys sometimes who run against him, but he's not going to give him the spot. I would be very surprised if Trump picked Ron DeSantis. So of all those choices, the one who could be the 2028 nominee is J.D. Vance. He is where the GOP base is. He's extremely intelligent. He's just the guy. So the question then becomes, does Trump want a VP who can be the next guy, or does he want a VP who's kind of milquetoast? That's what Trump did in 2016. I like Mike Pence, actually, but Mike Pence, kind of a milquetoast guy. So Mike Pence contrasted with Trump. J.D. Vance is a little bit more of a star. Does Trump want to share the stage with a star? Does he want to set up the next Republican administration or no? Next question, how does Donald Trump make himself impeachment or even assassination proof? Do you put someone in there who is more conventionally conservative like Mike Pence? That was a line during the Trump administration. We can't get rid of Trump because Mike Pence is even more right-wing than he is. Of course, they did try to impeach. They successfully impeached Trump twice. They obviously didn't convict and remove him from office, but they did impeach him. Do you want to put a guy in there who anyone who wants to impeach or murder Trump thinks, I actually don't want this guy to be president? That's going to be the question. But JD has set himself up in pretty much a lane of his own. If Trump wants the legacy pick, he's probably going with J.D. Vance. But the question is, does Trump want that legacy pick, or does he want just a regular old supporting man like he did last time? Because Trump is looking better and better each day. Right now, there's a survey that just came out from KSTP, Survey USA, suggested that Minnesota might be in play for Trump. Minnesota. Ronald Reagan wins 49 states in 1984. He doesn't win Minnesota. Minnesota goes to Mondale, the Democrat. Trump could be the first Republican to pick up Minnesota in a very, very long time. But we're looking at the polls. Biden 44, Trump 42. Other 9%. Very much within striking distance. It's a statistical tie. Now, this is up from February. February, Biden was leading 42 to 38. Trump has made up a lot of ground there. Why is that? What's changed? To me, the only real clear change is the war in Gaza, which a lot of libs, both the woke campus intifada and the Muslim voters, are blaming Biden for, because Biden's the one who is the president, and he's the one funding the Israeli military, and he's the global hegemon, and he's calling the shots. There are a lot of Muslims in Minnesota these days. The libs thought it was really smart to import a ton of Somalis to the Twin Cities. Well, that might be coming back to bite them. You might say, well, if Reagan couldn't carry it when he carried every other state, there's no way that Trump is going to carry it. Well, it's a different calculus now. It's different voters. To get back to Marco Rubio's point about mass migration, when you fundamentally change the demographics of a country, when you change the people who make up the country, then you can't rely on the past to set the precedent here, because it's a different country, which means different calculus and different rules. Speaking of religion, you ought to check out John Paul the Great Catholic University. Go to jpcatholic.edu/Knowles. Liberal-controlled universities and entertainment establishments are two of the biggest battlegrounds for the health and sanity of our culture. John Paul the Great Catholic University in Escondido, California, offers a non-woke alternative. JP Catholic gives creative conservatives hands-on training in their craft alongside a robust liberal arts education. JP Catholic offers programs in film production, animation, screenwriting, music design, and even video games, forming the next generation of creative professionals who will bring truth, beauty, and goodness to the entertainment industry. If you are not looking for a degree but want to sharpen your skills, JP Catholic also offers free online courses. Right now, JP Catholic is offering our listeners a full application fee waiver at jpcatholic.edu/Knowles, Knowles. Applications are still open for this fall with generous scholarships available. Pursue excellence in your creative craft without sacrificing your values. Visit jpcatholic.edu/Knowles, Knowles. That is jpcatholic.edu/Knowles. Speaking of multiculturalism, there's a new video game out, Assassin's Creed Shadows. I'm not the biggest gamer. The last video game that I really cherished is Donkey Kong Country, maybe Donkey Kong 2 for Super Nintendo. I played a little bit of Grand Theft Auto in my teenage years. I'm not proud of that, but I'm not the biggest gamer in the world. I've never played Assassin's Creed. I don't know very much about it, except I know that in the new Assassin's Creed, the final boss is a samurai who is not Japanese. The samurai is a black guy, and the character's name is Yasuke. So I got this article about it here, which I sort of skimmed because I'm not going to play this video game at all. But there was a big outcry. They said, this is DEI in video games. Assassin's Creed, a whole game about samurais, has replaced the big samurai with a black guy. This is political correctness, wokeism run amok. I am pro Yasuke. I am totally fine with Yasuke. I grant, yes, maybe part of the reason they put Yasuke in there is because he's a black guy and they're all woke and pro DEI and lib and everything. But Yasuke is a real guy. And not only is he a real guy in the history of Japan, he is a 16th century samurai who came to Japan with Italian Christian Jesuit missionaries back in the days when the Jesuits were really solid, went over there, and then some top Japanese imperial officials liked him. They took a shine to the guy, and they noticed that he was extremely strong. One account said he was as strong as 10 Japanese men put together. And so they enlisted him. And he was a retainer, but a type of samurai in Japan for a very long time. So it totally works out to me. It's an interesting story historically. It really did happen, which is more than you can say for a lot of video games and a lot of the Assassin's Creed stories. And if the idea is you want to fight the bigger, badder guys as you get further down the line, if this guy had the strength of 10 men, then it makes perfect sense for him to be in there. The motivations might have been lib and woke and PC and identity politics and whatever, but it's a pretty good story. And I like that he came over with Jesuit missionaries, so I'm totally fine. Yasuke gets the seal of approval from me, even though I will never play the game. Nihil obstat. Speaking of cultural controversies, Justice Sam Alito, one of, if not the greatest living American jurist, the man who wrote the decision overruling Roe v. Wade, the man who, in my opinion, has been more correct about more cases that have gone before the court during his tenure there than any other justice. Sam Alito is under fire because apparently after the 2020 election, a flag at his home was flown upside down. Now, the upside down flag is a signal of distress. It's the sort of thing you do when your ship is at sea. If you fly the flag upside down, you're saying, we're sinking, come save us. And so it's also taken as a symbol for a nation that's in distress. Maybe we're not literally sinking, but politically we are sinking. And after the 2020 election, it was flown upside down. And so the libs are calling on Alito to recuse himself from all sorts of cases. And not only that, they're lying about what the symbol means, and I think they're being very disingenuous. Here's the New York Times. At Justice Alito's house, a Stop the Steal symbol on display. Stop the Steal symbol? What are you talking about? You're saying the people who questioned the 2020 election, which was rigged, they invented hanging the flag upside down? First of all, that symbol has been around for many, many centuries as a symbol of distress broadly. But two, the libs use that symbol all the time. You go to any lib rally, and if they're flying the American flag and they're not setting it on fire, they're probably going to be flying it upside down as a symbol of their distress. Stop the steals. I like to think the New York Times knows better and they're just lying. I don't know. Their whole newsroom might be filled with just completely uneducated children now. But more like, I think the more charitable view actually is that they're lying, which they frequently do. What happened here? According to Shannon Bream, who talked to Justice Alito, they had been walking around their neighborhood and all sorts of neighbors were screaming obscenities, not just at Justice Alito, but at his wife, calling her all sorts of vicious things, including the C word. And this is all this kind of nastiness around the 2020 election. And so for a brief period of time when they get home, the justice's wife decided to hang the flag upside down as a symbol of distress. Let's not forget that when Justice Alito wrote the decision that overruled Roe v. Wade, someone on the court, presumably a lib, leaked that decision to bring pressure to bear on Justice Alito so that the conservatives could change their votes or be murdered before the decision came out. Because if one of them had been murdered before the decision came out, then they wouldn't have overruled Roe v. Wade. So the libs effectively put out a hit on Alito and his family and the other conservative judges, so much so that Alito had to move out of his house during this period of time after the libs broke court norms and leaked this kind of a decision. And a lib traveled from California to Washington to murder Justice Kavanaugh. And the only reason that he didn't succeed is that thankfully some U.S. Marshals were there and saw him as he was about to go into Kavanaugh's house and murder him and possibly his entire family. Okay? So if Mrs. Alito was feeling a little distressed, I think I can understand that. Meanwhile, the libs disrespect the American flag every single day, multiple times a day. But we are told that because of this brief expression of political distress, Justice Alito doesn't get to weigh in on cases. Give me a break. You might hear, I hope you don't, you might hear some squishes in the next few days say, well, you know, Alito, he probably shouldn't have done that, or Mrs. Alito, whoever, he probably, that's an inappropriate way to fly the flag and not a good, and you know he probably shouldn't have done that. Anybody who criticizes, counter signals, in any way goes after Alito over this non-controversy is never to be trusted again. I have no quarter for these people. This man has been through hell to uphold the law and basic aspects of virtue and justice. I don't want to hear one little peep of criticism over arguably the greatest living jurist. Coda to that, can you imagine if the story came out that Alito's wife wanted to fly the flag a certain way and he told her not to? What would the story have been then? Troglodyte, misogynist Alito shuts his wife up and puts her in her place and won't let her express her political points of view. This man, he's anti-woman. He needs to recuse himself from the cases. That's what it is. Same thing with Clarence Thomas. Clarence Thomas, another one of the greatest living jurists. His wife, Ginny Thomas, is involved in politics. And they try to get Thomas to recuse himself because his wife is politically involved. Could you imagine? Justice Thomas, this misogynist, won't let his wife express her political opinions. He's violating her constitutional rights. He needs to recuse himself. That's all this is about. And they've come to the conclusion that the conservative judges need to recuse themselves. They'll fill in the backstory, even if it's something as flimsy as his wife hung the flag a certain way for an hour. No criticism. I don't want to hear not one little peep. No, thank you. No, thank you. Speaking of women's issues, women supposedly being oppressed, we are now in day 6 or 7, I think, of Harrison Butker Gate. Harrison Butker, the Chiefs kicker, who is a Catholic and gave a speech at a Catholic college and articulated basic Catholic perspectives on the faith, on human nature, and on society. And for that, he has been pilloried in the media. His own league has come out and condemned him. They've called him a misogynist because he said that actually raising a family is generally more fulfilling than working at the widget factory, for Mr. McGillicuddy in Manhattan. So for this, he's been pilloried. What do the women have to say? Now, the women bought up all of his jerseys. It was the women who bought them up. And maybe the men bought the jerseys too, but there's men's jerseys and women's jerseys, different sizes because men and women are different. The women's jerseys sold out. They sold out of the NFL store. Actually, I got a little interesting intelligence tidbit. Apparently, you can still buy the jerseys. Let's see. You can still buy the jerseys. Someone just texted this to me at, where is it? I guess at the KC Chiefs Pro Shop. You've got or you can pre-order them. I don't know. They're doing their best to fill this because so many people want the Butker jersey, especially women. Why? Because many women, perhaps most women, are not feminists. They're not. The feminists take up all the oxygen in the room because they never stop yammering, and they have a lot of institutional power because the political order is liberal. But many, and probably most women, are not feminists. And Harrison Butker looks like the guy from the Chad meme, and he's articulate and persuasive because his views happen to be correct and in line with the perennial teaching of the church, and also knowable from reason, his views on male-female relations. So that's why. And those women who are not feminists tend to be a lot stronger and a lot saner than the liberal women. I don't want to paint with too broad a brush, but you find your average mom of 5, your trad mom, living somewhere in the middle of the country, who raises her family, keeps her house in order, manages the social life, maybe even does some kind of income generating work. A lot of mothers do that too. She is going to have her life much more in order than the liberal woman living in the middle of Manhattan who's on 500 milligrams of every SSRI drug for depression. She's going to be seeing her useless therapist who she's been seeing for 15 years, who never seems to cure anything, who just goes out and hooks up with a bunch of dudes, and it never goes anywhere. And this drives her crazy, but she can't admit that it's driving her crazy. And she's working a job for some boss who doesn't care about her at all and will happily throw her out and would probably happily back over her with a truck if it would make him another 5 cents to his bottom line. And those women, they get really, really angry, and they express that anger all the time. They do, well, we covered this story on Friday. They go to rage retreats where they scream and yell and cry. They pay some fake guru witch doctor thousands of dollars to go yell and scream in the woods. But that's just the latest version of what they've been doing for a very long time. That's what the Women's March is about. Not a lot of normal women at the Women's March. Okay, the normal women are home with their families. And not every woman needs to get married. Some other women might be in their religious life, or they might have consecrated celibacy and just be kind of normal, okay? And the normal women, they're out there just living their lives. They're not whining. They're not screaming. They're not watching CNN. They are buying Harrison Butker jerseys. Mark your calendars for a Daily Wire Backstage event you're not going to want to miss. Join Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, Andrew Klavan, the God King Jeremy Boring, and of course, yours truly, Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, to watch for free, live on Daily Wire Plus. Backstage is back, baby. We're going behind the scenes, beyond the headlines. Jeremy has a very special announcement that you will hear about on Backstage first. We've been busy. It's been a minute since we've all been together. There's a lot to cover. Watch the show live exclusively on Daily Wire Plus, Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central. You do not want to miss it. My favorite comment on Friday is from Kristen G1011, who says, Michael Knowles, I love when you do your Dr. Fauci impression. Priceless. Not so many opportunities these days, because Dr. Fauci went off into the sunset. But now, as the NIH admits that Dr. Fauci lied, he might get hauled in front of Congress again. Or he might just come out and do COVID again in the lead up to the 2024 election, you dumb sheep. You get that jab, you sheep. Speaking of women's issues, a woman has just been filmed wrestling a peeping Tom in a gender-neutral changing room. This woman, the guy must have been a little bit weak because she got this peeping Tom, or maybe he was just in a compromised position. His pants appear to be below his, well below his waist, let's say. And so she gets him in a headlock. He's also being held by a couple other people. So it's not just the woman. The woman alone wouldn't be able to hold him. But you got a guy down there on the ground kind of holding him. You got another person behind him. And she is not letting go. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Who could have predicted that when you start letting men go into women's bathrooms and women's changing rooms and you start encouraging gender-neutral facilities where people are getting undressed, who could have predicted that would exploit that? Who could have predicted except for all of the normal people? And we were all called bigots and wrong and stupid by all of the liberals who control the political order, but this happens. Why did it happen? Because of fallen human nature. Also known as nature, because that's just the way, we're all just kind of born into this world this way. It's not the individuals. What you're going to hear from libs in response to the story is, you know, my cousin is... The problem is fallen human nature. Men and women relate to sex differently. Men and women, they both do bad things, but they do bad things in different ways. They're both kind of creepy in different ways. And that is why we allow women to have their own changing rooms and their own bathrooms. Why don't you just teach men not to be big creeps? Because you can't. Because you can't. I mean, you can teach them. And for 99.9% of people, that'll be just fine. But you can't eradicate the fallenness of human nature. You can't perfect human nature through work. It can't happen. That's what the liberals are implying. When they say, why don't you stop teaching women to watch out for themselves and you better start teaching men not to be bad guys. Yeah, that idea is just the liberal idea that you can perfect human nature through your own work and reason. It's the same old Pelagian idea that we can achieve salvation through our own works. You can't. And every time you try it, it fails. And so women are going to keep being peeped on and things and changing rooms and bathrooms if you encourage these policies. And the libs are going to keep saying, well, no, just give us a little more time, a little more effort, a little more money. And then we'll eradicate the fallenness of human nature. You won't. The problem isn't the one guy. The problem isn't even you. The problem is how human nature works. That you don't understand because you have false premises that you then implement in policies in society that lead to misery, inevitably. That's why. Speaking of violence against women, Puff Diggity Doo Dog, P. Diddy, has just been caught on camera viciously beating his girlfriend. Now, this apparently didn't happen recently. This happened in 2016. Puff Diggity Doo Dog, a woman seen walking down a hallway, then Puff Daddy comes running out in a towel, otherwise naked. And then he throws this woman to the ground and just starts kicking her and beating her. And then he takes her bag because she was apparently trying to escape. Then he keeps kicking her. Then he drags her down the hallway like a complete animal. And then she thinks she sort of got away, trying to creep away, but doesn't work. Okay. Now, why is Puff Daddy not being prosecuted for this? The basic answer is because there's a statute of limitations, and this happened in 2016, and the statute of limitations is 3 years, so it takes you to 2019. It's now 2024. Can't work. There's all sorts of speculation because we know that the feds raided Diddy's home. We know that he held these crazy, weird drug parties. We know there were cameras and tapes all over his house. So some have speculated, including Kanye West, have speculated that Diddy got pinched for his crimes and then became a federal informant.
As far as Meek Mills, Puff Daddy, whoever, none of these, all you fake hard you. Hold on. Okay. All you fake hard you. You know what I'm saying? I don't give a because you can't shoot nobody anyway. And the reason why you got to talk is because you did a deal, you fed. You know what I'm saying? That's why you got to come at me, because part of the deal for you to be a do all that and get out of jail is that you promise that you're going to go pull my co-car. So y'all shut the up about me. Now let me say it calm. You shut the up about Michael.
Yeah, you better shut the F up about Michael. I don't know who Michael is there. I don't know who he's referring to. But in any case, Kanye has said plenty of eccentric things over the years, some of which have been more dubious than others. So I don't know if P. Diddy's a fed. I guess I have to say allegedly he was caught on tape beating his girlfriend. I think he admitted to it, though. So I don't know why I have to say allegedly, but I don't know. He had a whole apology video and everything. My take on it is a little more basic than all that. I don't know. Maybe he's a fed. I don't know. There are plenty of weirdos and criminals who end up working with the federal government. So maybe he is, maybe he isn't. I don't know. My main takeaway is it's always the ones you most expect. With some exceptions that prove the rule, it's always the ones you most expect. When this story came out, everyone was so shocked. Puff Daddy? This extremely decadent rapper? This guy who has flaunted all the worst aspects of our culture for 30 years? He did bad things? Stop the presses! Stop it! Hold on, extra, read all about it. Allegedly, I have to say allegedly. He allegedly held the parties with the drugs. He allegedly had cameras all over his house. He allegedly filmed the weird stuff. Even though there's photos and stuff, it was all alleged. But if I were using my gut here, I would just say a good rule of thumb is, with some exceptions that prove the rule, it's always the ones you most expect. Now, speaking of fights, we know that the debate is on between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. The big debate is on. The question is, why is it on? Why did Biden agree to this? I have my theories. The liberals are weighing in now too, and even very prominent liberals are beginning to admit the debate is on because Biden is losing. We'll get to that a little bit more tomorrow. You know I'm such a tease. But this is great news for conservatives. Not just that the debate is happening, not just that Biden was the one to propose it. It is great news that even the libs are admitting what that means, because it means that conservatives actually do have a chance. Not everything is an op. Not everything is totally rigged. Things are a little bit rigged. Things are a little bit an op. But man does not ultimately control all of history. And things just happen sometimes. And we might have a chance. The rest of the show continues now. You don't want to miss it. Become a member. Use code Knowles, Canada WLAS at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans.